So Ethereum is doing sort of a Mastercoin style raise. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we're going to announce some more details about our fundraiser at a slightly later date. That's kind of the notion. It's going to be a coin swap, and we'll discuss that at a slightly later date.
One of the main criticisms for the Ethereum project is this notion of a pre-mine, the founders pre-mine and the investors pre-mine. Why is it necessary to have people have a stake in the system? Why can't they just get it like everyone else in the way that Invictus Innovations went about having a fair and equitable place, and then once the starting gun went off, everyone had an equal chance at getting a piece of the pie?
I think Invictus is actually one of the first great case studies of where this is not going to work anymore. So everybody would like to embrace the Satoshi Nakamoto model of, let's just launch the network and mine. And that works really well when you have a very small ecosystem, because you'll end up getting a large amount of the currency, number one. Number two, the cost of developing Bitcoin was quite small. It was sweat equity. A very small group of developers were working on Bitcoin for most of its early history, so there was almost no development cost, if any. In the case of these large-scale projects, they require huge amounts of upfront capital. You have to do security audits. You have so many things that need to occur. And so you have to embrace this idea, because they're going to have much stiffer mining competition, as ProtoShares did. I believe 1/3 of the currency base got mined out in 2 weeks. That the idea of just mining only distribution is the best way of doing it. Second, Invictus started to embrace a Mastercoin style fundraiser. They had this notion of angel shares. Why? Because they didn't actually get any money very little money from the release of ProtoShares. They weren't able to acquire it. And philosophically, let's take a step back and think what this proposal means. So not only do the developers have to put up all the costs up front, they receive absolutely nothing, but now they're competing with everybody else in the ecosystem, and they have to spend their own money and time to acquire some of the currency and their own money and time to try to make the currency valuable. That doesn't seem to be a very inviting entrepreneurial endeavor. Instead, rather, we would like to look at what's happened in venture capital, what's happened in Silicon Valley over the last 60 years. So if you look at the great success stories like the Googles and the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Microsofts and so forth, generally speaking, you start with a high amount of equity from the stakeholders who started the entity, the people who built it. Like, for example, Bill Gates had 64% of Microsoft when Microsoft was started. And what you want to see is a general deterioration of the founders' holdings, a general divestment of their influence. So Bill Gates holds, I think, 5 or 6% of Microsoft right now. Still quite a large amount of money. I think it's over $10 billion. It's pretty good to be Bill Gates. But he's no longer as powerful as he was when they flipped the switch. So that's the same thing we're trying to do here with Ethereum, is we really want to reimagine the notion of venture capital. We say, if you come up with a good idea, instead of having to go through the traditional seed round, the Series A, the Series B, or do some strange kabuki where you launch the currency for mining and try to compete with all the other miners somehow, it's probably just a simply better idea to be as transparent as possible and say, this is my stake, this is your stake, these are the terms, do you want it on board, yes or no? And create a divestment schedule so that over time the currency supply becomes more equitable. I think pre-mines are terrible when the currency supply is fixed. For example, if you have Bitcoin, you have a maximum of 21 million coins. It's a really bad idea to say this person will own 5% or 10% of Bitcoin forever. That's a really bad idea to give somebody that kind of endowment. With Ethereum, we don't suffer from that problem. We have a linear persistent inflation model, which means the same amount of coins are produced per block. So over time, you see deterioration percentage-wise of the founders' holdings, but as the ecosystem grows and more uses occur, you see usually nonlinear growth in demand. So people's ROI is still very stable. They actually get a good return on their investment, just like everybody in Microsoft got a very good return on their investment. But you also accomplish the dual stake of equitability. You have much more equal distribution of your currency base. If you want to do things like proof of stake, that's incredibly important. If you want to do things like building DAOs with consensus mechanisms based upon the currency holders, that's also incredibly important. Because, well, if you have a deflationary model, if you have a fixed currency model, then a small oligarchy will always have control of the network. So we think this is the nicest balance that we were able to find inside the ecosystem. We say, here are the terms. We start with initially a fairly robust percentage. Over time, the percentage deteriorates thanks to the mechanics of inflation that we've developed. And we have every incentive aligned.
It is open source.
That's correct.
So what's to stop me from just doing a hard fork from the Genesis block?
You could absolutely do that, and that's what we call firing the founders. And it's a great idea in theory, but in principle, it generally doesn't work. So I don't think a lot of Bitcoiners like the U.S. government. There's reasons why people enter a magic internet currency, right? Why haven't they hard forked Bitcoin to remove the U.S. government's holdings of Bitcoin? After the Dread Pirate Roberts seizure, the U.S. government controls a meaningful percentage of
Sounds
Bitcoin
like a good idea. I could get behind that.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people would agree with that. They say, well, maybe we should divest the U.S. government. This is a good idea. Or maybe some people say, Satoshi's no longer productive. Why should he have 10% of the currency base forever? So people would have the notion to do this, yet they don't. Just like people would have the notion to use Bing if the features were better, yet they always seem to enter google.com in the browser. These networks are not made valuable by the source code that imbues them. They're made valuable by the social consensus within the network. They're made valuable by the user base in the network, the infrastructure built around the network. And so miners are going to stay on the chain that has the highest value. That usually means they're going to stay on the chain that was launched first. Investors are going to stay on the chain with the people who have the highest probability of adding value to the chain. And so if the founders are a bunch of idiots, they might hard fork and remove the founders and replace them with others to incentivize them. And that's actually a really great option to have. But more importantly, that's not a problem for the ecosystem. Because if you hard fork, all you've really done is fire the founders. It's only a problem for us. And that's great to give that option to the community. We have to kind of earn the right to keep that.
I was looking at the market cap. You said linear persistent inflation.
That's correct.
And there's quite a number of zeros as it relates to the market cap of Ethereum. Does that mean there's going to be several trillion units?
No, that's not true at all. That's complete FUD. There are not going to be several trillion units of Ethereum for a very long time. Theoretically, one could reach this. So the amount of Ethereum produced is going to be proportional to the fundraiser. So currently the fundraiser says 1 Bitcoin equals 1,000 Ether, and we're going to institute some form of hard cap. So there will be a maximal distribution of Ether. So if we raise, 30,000 Bitcoins, then we'll produce some set of Ether. And then every year we'll produce 0.4x of that. So we're not going to reach massive amounts, many, many trillions of Ether for quite some time, unless my math is completely off. Is it Vitalik?
No, your math is not completely off, Charles.
Yeah, I didn't think so. And but some people seem to confuse the maximum amount of Ether that could be made in the year 10,000 or the year 20,000 with the amount of Ether in distribution today. So let's go through some numbers real quick so we can kind of get an idea of the market capitalization, because this is very important for people. So let's say we have a very successful swap, and Bitcoin is valued at around $800, $840, and we raise 30,000 Bitcoin. So with the pre-mine factored in with the IPO, the initial market capitalization at launch, meaning after the IPO has concluded, will be $37 million, give or take. And with linear persistent inflation, for neutral ROI, we'd have to add about $12 million per year to the ecosystem in value. My shirt I'm wearing right now has 5 lines of code on the back of it, which completely replicates Namecoin, and Namecoin's worth that much. So I'm pretty certain we can reach a market cap that high within year 1. In fact, I believe probably higher. So I think the ROI proposition for investors is quite nice. We were really careful about how we designed this so that we could see balance in our ecosystem. We really would like to see a lot of balance in our ecosystem. So we want to have every party, whether they be a speculator, they be a miner, they be an application developer on top of the Ethereum ecosystem, to be able to get a positive ROI from their endeavor and be able to change things with the ecosystem. And we feel that this model is really the best of all worlds. We could certainly be wrong. And the beautiful thing about the open source movement is that people can take whatever we've done, as we've taken some inspiration from Bitcoin and those who have come in before it, and change it, and maybe soft fork or hard fork it. And that's really the beauty of the system, because in the end, the ultimate winner, regardless of what happens, is the consumer.
Well, thank you so much. I know you're about to pass out after the handful of hours you've slept in the past couple of days.
Yeah, I think I've actually been up for about 2 days straight now.
Vitalik, thanks so much.
It's been a lot of fun.
Would you like to buy Bitcoin? Cash into Coins provides the fastest, easiest, and safest way to buy Bitcoin in the United States. Simply place an order online, deposit cash at any supported bank, and relax. Cash into Coins will verify your deposit and send out your Bitcoin within 24 hours. Join tens of thousands of people who have purchased from Cash into Coins. What are you waiting for? Buy your Bitcoin today. Go to cashintocoins.com. That's cashintocoins.com.